Thursday on Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here. Glad to be back for another day. Hope you all are doing well out there. Get outside, enjoy the weather. It doesn't get any better than this. I know it's kind of lame when I talk about the weather at the start of the show, but it could not possibly be nicer right now. So please take me with you outside. I'm portable. The show is portable. All podcasts are portable. Go outside. It's not going to get much nicer than this. And it's a good show to bring outside. Chris Hine from the Tribune joins me here in just a few minutes. Talk a little Timberwolves Summer League. Probably the last time we'll have Chris on for a while as they kind of head for a quieter time in their evolution. But kind of talking through their Summer League roster, some guys that could help them this year, but also projecting forward into the future and also getting into some Anthony Edwards, USA basketball stuff, and a little bit more off-season talk. So Chris will join me here, like I said, in just a little bit. ESPN did a ranking of the top 100 professional athletes since 2000. I went through that list, have some thoughts about the Minnesotans that are on it, the Minnesotans that are not on it. So we'll get to that at the end of the show. Lynx here in a minute. Good win going into the break. First, though, what did I miss? Minnesota United. 9 straight games now where they have not won, either a loss or a draw in 9 straight games, tumbling all the way in the standings. They're somehow still tied for 9th in the West, so technically kind of in playoff contention despite that 9-game tumble. But last night's loss to DC United might be the worst of them all. DC United, a very mediocre side from the Eastern Conference in Major League Soccer, not currently in playoff position, came in with 5 wins all season long. Loons were up 2-1 late in the match at Allianz Field, thinking, okay, maybe finally going to break through, gonna, win a match, start feeling good about themselves again. Gave up the equalizer in the 90th minute, and then to make matters so much worse, the losing goal, the tie-breaking goal in the 91st minute, a minute later, both of them off of set pieces. It's been a struggle all season long. John Marthaler wrote about that for the Star Tribune, just how much they have struggled with the opponent's set pieces. It gets them twice in this game. They lose 3-2. They are running out of answers. They're running out of time. It feels like remember the Gophers basketball team a few years ago when nobody had high expectations, right? Ben Johnson had come in as head coach and lost pretty much his entire roster from the Richard Pitino era. Everybody transferred out, brought new guys in. They started something like 10-1. They were like, everyone's like, how are they doing this? How are they winning? Is this sustainable? And you're like, okay, when's the other shoe going to drop? And the Loons this year, start the year. They don't have their manager in right away. They don't have their decision makers in place until well after the point where you would want them to be in place. But they still, even without Eric Ramsey early, they still are able to start winning matches right away. And I was like, wow, look at these new look Loons playing with energy, playing with pace. Everybody's healthy. Everyone's feeling good. Ramsey comes in and it keeps going. The good times are going. They're like 2nd or 3rd in the West. They're like, can we, is this sustainable? Can they be that kind of team all season long? And just like the Gophers, who completely fell apart in the second half of that season, once conference play started, the Loons have fallen apart. Depth issues. International play has not helped them, of course. Injuries have not helped them. But every team deals with player absences, right? You've got to have a solid 18-player group so that you can count for that. The Loons have not had that this year. They've been exposed when players have been hurt or called away to their national teams, and that has really damaged their season. 9 in a row now. No excuses now, though. They got most of their guys back, and they still couldn't finish off this match. Now, they play San Jose next. San Jose, the worst team in the West, one of the worst teams in entire Major League Soccer. If they can't win this game, if they can't win this next home game, then we will really sound the alarm bells. But right now, 9 in a row, not feeling good about anything going on right now with this team. The Lynx, feeling a little bit better now. They've kind of muddled through this 5-game stretch without Nafisa Collier. They won the first 2, lost the next two, had this matinee. It's the camp day, so all the kids from camps get into the game. There's like 15,000 people at Target Center, many of them young, screaming. It's a different kind of atmosphere. The game starts in the afternoon. It's the last game before the Olympic break. They've got almost a month off for the Olympic break. They're down in the fourth quarter to Atlanta, and you're like, okay, are they going to be able to kind of muster up the kind of fortitude to win this game? And they do. They get enough plays down the stretch. They beat Atlanta. They kind of overcome all those obstacles, go 3-2 without Napheesa Collier. Now, no guarantees what her health will be when she, when play resumes in a month. Still sounds like she's hoping to play in the Olympics, which start, soon. But if she's able to come back healthy, bridging this gap, going 3-2 in this stretch probably will be pretty critical to their overall success, their overall playoff seeding. Probably found out a little bit about themselves, too. Here was Kayla McBride, who was excellent again on Wednesday, talking about the victory.
I mean, it's just a gritty win. Obviously, we lost 2 in a row. Coming in last game before the break, at home. The kids' game is 12 p.m. It's hard to get up for moments like that sometimes. So I was really proud of how we just continued to fight. We just kept talking to each other like 40 minutes, everything we got. And it was, people had different moments. T had some amazing moments. Court had some moments in the first half. Land. And that's what it's been all year. It's just been a collective effort and on both ends of the ball. So I was just super proud. I'm just super proud to be a part of this team. And wins like this, you're reminded of just how far we've come since the first day of training camp till now, and our collectiveness and our togetherness, how much we believe in one another. And that's what it's about, So just super proud.
It's like we talked about with Kent Youngblood last week. Lynx needed to get through this stretch in good shape. They don't have great aspirations unless Napheesa Collier comes back healthy. It's pretty good optimism that she will. If she does, getting to the break, 17-8, has to feel really good for this team. They've already surpassed some expectations for how many games they'd win for the entire season. And now here they are at the break. They get a little chance to rest, to get healthy. Hopefully Napheesa Collier is able to play in the Olympics, but doesn't overdo it, is able to come back healthy for this team, because right now, they're a top 4 team in the league. They will have a good chance to at least advance around in the playoffs and maybe more, because they have played the best teams in the league quite well, generally speaking, this season. So we will see where the season goes from now. But right now, shutting it down for almost a month along with the rest of the league.
Royal Credit Union's Smart Checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Enjoy financial freedom when you open your Royal Credit Union Smart Checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
Let's talk Timberwolves today with Chris Hine from the Star Tribune. A lengthy stay in Vegas. Was it like a residency you had there?
It pretty much was. I think I'm longer there than Mariah Carey will be when she returns to the Park MGM in a couple of weeks here. I think I was there for longer than she'll be there.
It's amazing. Well, there's plenty to do there. You had national team stuff, but also summer league stuff. Both of them interesting. It seems like Ant, his profile with Team USA continues to go up. Just nationally, his profile is continuing to rise.
Yeah, I think this is going to be kind of the next step in his career, quite honestly. He's started to capture the attention of the NBA world. Obviously, fans here in Minnesota ever since he was drafted, and this is the next step. Guys like Devin Booker said, we all have our followings, but this is a whole other level. He said he still has people that come up to him, talking about his Olympic experience a few years ago, and that's how they primarily remember him around the world. So, for as well known as Anthony Edwards is in America and locally here, I think there's still another audience for him to capture. We'll see just what he does this summer.
Yeah, it's a big moment for him, and it sounds like he's got some people in his corner. So more to come on that. What do you make of what you saw from the Summer League Wolves? And I got a question for you coming off of that here in just a minute.
Sure. It's interesting how hard they played defense. I thought,
Okay.
kind of a continuation of the big roster, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Obviously, everybody kind of wants to know, how did the new guys look? Dillingham and Shannon, and then the 3 games I saw, Dillingham, it was a little tough to get his shot on track in all 3 of them. And that was his biggest thing. They obviously were giving him a lot of responsibilities. He was running the offense. He had the ball in his hands a lot, which is something that they're obviously asking him to focus on here, is kind of that backup point guard, playmaker alongside Anthony Edwards, maybe running the second unit perhaps at some point. So obviously a lot on his plate. Terrence Shannon Jr., the other first-round pick this year, looks NBA ready right now, and I think the Wolves are excited about him and what he might be able to bring to this team right away next year, and potentially competing for minutes. He gives them something that they need, and it's scoring. He can go get a bucket, and he's not a liability defensively either. So, and he's built for the NBA now. So he's 23 years old. I think they like what they saw there, and I think he's very much in the mix for playing time once the season rolls around.
Speaking of playing time, let me put this to you, because I think I have an answer ready, and I've kind of batted this around on Twitter a little bit. But you had the 2 guys you just mentioned, these 2 draft picks, Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. Jalen Clark had some intrigue, some moments, a lot of steals, especially was it the first or second game? He had a bunch of steals in the G League against Orlando, right? He had a bunch of steals. And you have Leonard Miller and you have Josh Minot. Now, I'm not saying there's nobody else, but those 5 guys, 2 seasons from now, not next year, because they still got, we're still talking about a team with a certain window, but in a couple of years, you might be forced to make some decisions, maybe 2-3 years down the line. Let's just say 2 years. In 2026, how many of those guys are in the rotation?
It's a very good thought exercise right there. 2 years down the road, Dillingham, and I'm going to guess Shannon as well.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know that in 2 years Minot is here, because first of all, his contract will be up.
Yeah.
Before that, so he could just, even if he was getting time, he could end up leaving.
Yeah.
Leonard Miller, I'd be on the fence about, and I guess the same with Jalen Clark.
Yeah.
So I'd say 2 for sure, maybe 3. That would be my answer.
My guess was 3 or 4, just because of how many they might need eventually from a salary standpoint. But maybe 3 is probably a good ballpark. And am I missing anybody? Like who else summer league wise is on the radar?
I think it'll be interesting to see, the guard from France who just had to leave summer league, Nadir Heafy.
Yeah.
I think he was showing some stuff in the practices that they liked, and he's got a nice shot. He's a point guard. And I think he's a pretty good scorer. And was, I think, a cut from the French national team, but he was there working out. And I think impressed some people there too. So I think we'll see what happens with him and the rest of his summer. And if he did enough in the time that he was with the team to impress them, because I think the Wolves have their Exhibit 10 slot, which is kind of like the in-between contract of like a G League and a 2-way. It's like kind of a middle ground there. Okay. An Exhibit 10 deal. So they have that slot open still. So we'll see what they decide to do with that. And that's kind of it from Summer League. Kind of the principal players that are towards the back end of the bench right now. They've been in the system now for a while, in addition to the rookies who are coming in. So, it's a matter of who's going to end up getting that like 9th rotation slot, the 9th and 10th rotation slots, right? And you're going to be competing with a Joe Ingles for that slot as well. So that's, to me, is the most intriguing and unknown thing as we would enter next season for the Timberwolves, is, just what the bench minutes look? What do the bench minutes look like exactly? And I don't know that we're any. Somebody didn't make us any closer to answering that question. I think I think the thing it solidified was that Terrence Shannon Jr. for being a late first round pick seems to be a hit and somebody who could help them right away.
Now, for him, is it his age that's giving him a boost? I mean, he's got to be one of the oldest rookies in the league this year, and Dillingham will be one of the younger ones. So 23 versus 19 is a big deal. I mean, he's older than Ant, right? He's older than Ant.
Correct. Yeah, he's older than Anthony Edwards, which is crazy to think about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Ant's been in the league for 4 years already. So that is the difference there. But is it that, or is that obviously helps him no matter what? But I mean, is his game just kind of, what is it about his game that makes you say, man, this guy is just ready to cook on day one?
He attacks. He's always looking to attack the rim. I think that's the big thing for him. And when he gets around the rim, he can finish. And I think I was impressed just watching him up close. I think he has a nice touch around the rim. Okay. And he's very quick and forceful in his attacks. But when he puts the ball up, there's a certain amount of touch to it that doesn't always happen if you're going 100 miles an hour towards the hoop. Defensively, I think he can guard, and he's 6'6". He's well built. And summer league, you're not always just going up against 19 and 20-year-olds, right? There's summer league has guys who have been on two-way contracts. They've been in the G League for a while. They have been in the league or in the fringes of the league for a little bit. So they're not all just 19 and 20-year-olds. So he's going up against some guys closer to his age as well. But he stands out physically, and I think just scoring wise, I thought he really stood out, especially in that first game.
Yeah, I think he looks the part, and that piece of the roster will be interesting. It's gonna be kind of interesting to see how they kind of you had the late first round pick, and then you had a top 10 pick. But in terms of initial impact, it could be both. But they might have to temper expectations a little bit, just because Dillingham is so young and probably does need a little bit more of that development, even on a win now roster.
Yeah, we'll see. That the thing to keep in mind about Dillingham is that he had an injury. I think it was a foot or ankle injury. Okay. Kind of during the pre-draft process, so he wasn't really working out a ton. Okay. So this does represent like his first serious, real return to kind of basketball activities. So I think what you see with Dillingham, I would just maybe caution or condition it with that little asterisk, because this was his first real ramp up since being hurt. Okay,
that makes sense. That's fair. They can't have much more to do this offseason, right? They kind of tidied things up in a pretty tight manner.
Yeah, all the two-way slots are spoken for. They have 14 roster slots, and I don't know that they're going to add a 15th player to their main roster, because that would just mean more tax money when all was said and done. And yeah, that's about it. I think what you have right now is what they got. So this is your Timberwolves team headed into next season.
And they've got to feel
right now.
They've got to feel pretty good about that, right? Like I think we've talked about this already once, but like from where they started this offseason, I think they have to be pretty happy with how they've been able to kind of upgrade both the present and the future. We don't know how that'll play out, but like the shots they were able to take, even just adding someone like Joe Ingles, like it feels like they put themselves in a pretty good spot without having what looked like a lot of flexibility going in.
Yeah, they definitely put a priority on offense coming off the bench this year. Yeah. And, we'll see how that affects overall their defensive performance as a team. Like, Kyle Anderson isn't here anymore, but Kyle Anderson was a very sound defender. Yeah. And really played good team defense that contributed to that number 1 rating that they had last season. So when you replace him with Joe Ingles and rookies, even if Terrence Shannon and guys like that might be good defensively, you just wonder how NBA ready will they be on that end of the floor to fit into the Wolves scheme. So that'll be something I'm watching is, did they do a little bit of a trade-off for offense or defense for offense, and does it weigh down the defense maybe a little too much at times next season? We'll see. But that was clearly their priority after they didn't really have a ton of shot creation and making in that Dallas series.
Right.
Clearly had an impact on how they attacked this offseason, and just trying to, I think, build around Anthony Edwards and provide as many options for him and the attention that he draws. And now I think they do have a little more pop around him, and some guys that can knock down shots and get their own buckets when things maybe aren't going well for him.
Returning to Ant for one more second and defense, that was one thing that I think you wrote about and stood out from the early part of the USA camp. There was Steve Kerr talking about Ant's on-ball defense and how good it was a couple of years ago when they had him internationally, and then frankly how he needs to improve his off-ball defense. Is that, if he's not going to, if he's going to be taking up so much of his time this summer with USA basketball, which is a great thing to do, but maybe he's talking about maybe won't be able to add maybe one more offensive wrinkle to his arsenal. Is that an area where he can get better this offseason, that kind of off-ball defense concept that probably comes with more experience?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they've been talking about it for 4 years on the Timberwolves, though, so
yeah.
At some point, I don't know. He may just be what he is in terms of his off-ball defense. That might just end up being one of his kind of Achilles heels throughout his career. I'll be interested to see how that goes for Team USA, because on Team USA, and we'll see how this plays out, but he shouldn't be having the ball in his hands all the time the way he does with the Timberwolves.
Right.
So some of that is, there's a very real trade-off for Anthony Edwards when it comes to playing defense and offense. When you have the ball in your hands so much, it is hard to stay focused and ready on every defensive possession as well.
Sure.
It requires a lot of energy, both physical and mental. So, that I think some of the problems that he has off ball defense are understandable. They're not excusable, but they're understandable, because the Timberwolves ask him to do so much. On Team USA, he's not going to have to be that guy for 38 minutes a night, 40 minutes a night. So, maybe there's a little more energy that he can have to expend on that end of the floor, and not just with his on-ball defense either.
Well, in getting back to the Wolves too, conserving his energy is a big deal, because I feel like whether it was the physical energy or the mental energy or some kind of combination of both, like he was gassed by the time they got to that Dallas series. And you can say, how is that possible? Like, these are athletes in the prime of their lives. He's 22 years old, was at that point. How is that possible when you get to that stage? But if you're tired, you're tired. And if you've been taking in so much and you're at a point in the season where you haven't played before, that probably takes a toll, and they have to take that into consideration going into this year too. Like, how do you get ready to play in May and June when you haven't done that before?
Exactly. That's kind of what he talked about in the immediate aftermath of that Dallas series, that he was gassed and he did not feel like he was trained, and he's got to train himself a little differently in the offseason to withstand some of that. And I don't know how he's going to accomplish that. Basically, he's gone right from the end of the season in early June, took a little time off there, but now, early July, you're right back at Olympic preparation, right? So, and then late September, training camp starts. So I don't know when he's going to have the time to really recondition his body the way he wants to. It'll be something to ask him about, once the season gets here next fall. But just looking at his schedule, it's just he's staying busy. Listen, improving and staying conditioned, the Olympics will do that for you, and playing against some of the best competition in the world. So, I don't think he's going to be like, this is not a bad thing overall. This is going to be a thing that, will be a significant milestone in his career. But yeah, I think there is a little trade-off of, you get benefits for playing from the Olympics, but you don't get to go through a normal off season like you normally would if you didn't have to play in the Olympics. And you can't just hone in on the couple of things that you want to improve, or your conditioning, or what have you.
Now, I understand that you are maybe going to get a little off season finally, maybe at some point, although you got a lot coming up Tube, it sounds like you are, as of recording, before I let you go, you are going again tonight to see the Carole King musical. How many times have you seen that, Chris? I know you're a Five Timers Club member at the Star Tribune at the of Daily Delivery. Are you a Five Timers Club?
Yes. This will be my fourth time going to Chanhassen Dinner Theaters to see the show.
Okay.
We'll get to a fifth, don't worry, at some point. But later this month, I'm going to be hopping in honestly, probably Friday. I'm going to be hopping in my car and driving down to Atlanta to report out the book I'm writing on Anthony Edwards.
Yeah.
So that will be the rest of my summer. There's no break for me.
No.
So we're going kind of right into that for the next few months.
You saw the Carole King musical on the road too, though, didn't you? So that makes at least 5, right?
I've seen it several times over the years. Yes.
But
The Wolves happened to be in Phoenix this year.
That's what it was.
When
it was
the
Phoenix.
show was
That's
playing
right.
in Phoenix.
Yeah.
So I got a ticket. I got a ticket to see it in Phoenix.
Okay.
But when it was on Broadway, in my old life at the Chicago Tribune, whenever I was in New York, I pretty much went to see it.
Okay.
So any trip I had to New York, I've seen it dozens of times. Yes.
Why are you driving to Atlanta? That's a long drive.
Have you tried to get around Atlanta?
Yeah,
if you need to go, if you're interviewing people for a book,
I suppose
you kind of want to be able to drive around Atlanta. Atlanta is very much a car city. You don't want to have to be Ubering place to place. Yeah. So I'm taking my car to Atlanta. I'm gonna try to find a little spot to lay my head when I'm there and be kind of coming back and forth between Atlanta and Minneapolis as I need to do interviews for the book.
Oh, that sounds like an exciting but maybe a little bit exhausting off season. We'll see who comes back fresher from all of that.
It will not be me.
You or Ant. No, it will not be you.
It will not be me. It will not be me. But I'm looking forward to it regardless.
We are too. Well, best of luck with that. Thanks for checking in today. And Chris, we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mike.
Great stuff from Chris. I think I'll write about those guys we talked about, those summer league candidates for rotation spots who could be bigger impact, this year to a certain degree, but certainly 2-3 years down the road when they will be a little bit older and when the Wolves would have more of a need. I'll kind of break down where those guys could fit into future rotations. I'll write about that later today on StarTribune.com. Let's finish with the cooler. This caught my eye the other day. It's been going on for a while, I guess. They've been kind of revealing these 25 at a time. ESPN ranking the top 100 athletes since the start of 2000. Anytime someone does this, I'm like, okay, let's go through this and find all the Minnesotans. Very provincial. It's what we do here. We want the local angle. We want the Minnesota angle. We want the one of us angle. In this case, it's more than just one of us. So I'm trying to find out who are the Minnesotans on the list. Number 1 Minnesota connection on the list comes down to number 23. And I was kind of surprised. This was pretty high to me for him on this list, but I'm not going to argue with it. Kevin Garnett, number 23 on the list of the top 100 athletes, pro athletes. Let's make that distinction. Pro athletes since the start of the 2000 season. Now, you might think, 23, like KG is a Hall of Famer. He's a great player. Won a championship, won an MVP. He is absolutely one of the all-time greats. But you look at the rest of this list, there's a lot of people who are, down on this list. Like Aaron Rodgers, like 91st on this list. Like there's a lot of really good players. Like Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time MVP. A lot of people way down on this list or not on the list at all, where you're like, okay, this is a hard list to crack. So KG at number 23 feels like a pretty big deal. Next Minnesotan on the list, just a few spots lower at 27, Randy Moss. I knew he was going to be on this list. I knew KG and Moss. Those felt like to me, like at least on the men's side, were the two obvious ones, and they both get pretty high up there. I think Moss, had he won a championship, and he was close, of course, both with Minnesota and New England especially, would have been even a little bit higher. But Moss certainly, redefined the position, came into the league in 98, so a little bit of the early part of his career couldn't be considered for this list, so maybe that's part of what was holding him back a little bit too, but certainly plenty of accomplishments after 2000. The last Minnesota connection that I could find on this list, 36th, Maya Moore from the Lynx at number 36, 4-time WNBA champ, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, a league MVP, a finals MVP, all at WNBA first team 5 times. I mean, she's just one of the all-time greats in the league. Terrific career. She'll have her jersey retired a little bit later this year. I believe it's the next time that Caitlin Clark will be here. That'll be quite a day. Should be quite a crowd for that game, both a pro Lynx crowd and a pro Caitlin Clark crowd. But right now, Maya Moore, 36th on this list. Now, like I said, I'm not going to talk about like snubs, just in general, like who didn't make this list, showing the quality of this list. No other Lynx players. You know, they had certainly had a dynasty. Lindsay Whalen, Simone Augustus, Sylvia Fowles certainly could have been considered, but none of them, aside from Maya Moore, make the list. No Joe Mauer. Going into the Baseball Hall of Fame, redefined the catcher position going into the Hall of Fame this weekend. No Joe Mauer, no Twins on this list for that matter. He would have been the one that I would have thought could have made this list if there was going to be any Twins players on this list. But again, you're not just talking about team sports here. You're talking about a whole bunch of individual athletes. Like Michael Phelps was number 1 on this list. You've got gymnasts. You've got other athletes like that who didn't make this list, or did make this list. So it's not just team players, which helps explain kind of what, why there might not be some of your expected athletes. No Adrian Peterson. Again, opportunities for a lot of people, but no Adrian Peterson. Skiing, no Jesse Diggins, no Lindsey Vaughn. So, it is a hard list to crack. That's kind of my key takeaway here. A hard list to crack, but those who did make it, certainly deserving. Certainly, KG being the number 1 Minnesota athlete on this list, maybe a little surprising to me, but maybe not when you consider all he accomplished. So that will do it for me today. I'm going to talk Twins on Friday's show with Bobby Nightingale Jr. Might get into the TV stuff a little bit, but probably mostly looking forward to the post-break Twins. Trade deadline coming up here in less than 2 weeks. Where do they stand going into the final 2.5 months? Bobby and I will talk about that and more on Friday's show. Until then, have a great rest of your Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow.